Hello, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net and welcome to the vlog for October 5th, 2017. So it's just a quick update. Once again, this is not a really formal video. I just want to discuss chromaticism, why we use bebop scales, and just give you an update on things that are happening on the website. So quick live/website update. We have this series of videos, which I decided to record one every 2 weeks. I think I messed up the schedule, but anyways, you will see you have two already at this state, and you have one coming up next Friday, which is the Blues in F. Thanks to members on the jazzguitarlessons.net members page and people that have contributed, commented. People had even recorded their own version and uploaded them on Facebook or YouTube, so that's great. Discussing chromaticism now, so I just want to take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to debunk some stuff, simplify some stuff, actually, and just go deeper in a simpler way. I know that's what she said, right? Just go simpler into what are the essentials. So let's talk about the passing tone bebop scale. Typically people will let's first do one comment about bebop scales and people learning them online, looking at teachers like David Baker and Barry Harris, and people will go, why are we playing descending lines all the time? So, you know, these things instead of... So I saw the question asked, someone posed a question. Pose or ask? Sorry, my brain is still in French, right? And the answer that I saw was unsatisfactory to some extent. So I'll tell you right now, it's super simple. Why do we play descending scales? Because music obey gravity the same way objects obey gravity. So music has a tendency to go down, and one of the strongest resolution is to go from a G to a C, right? Da, da, da. And thus the strongest resolution is to go down a fifth. So and this in turn would go da, da, da. I don't have a 7th string or an 8th string. So if you look at this movement, if you were to fill it in, so it's only natural that we have scales or whatever it might be that are going down, because naturally if you go down a scale, you go down 5 steps in the scale, so you go down a fifth. So we might think of this is a G, right? This is the plainest way to explain it, is music obeys this kind of downwards motion, and if you plan your scales accordingly, and if you look at things the right way, you can save a lot of efforts by simply going down scales and outlining the chords. So this is what jazz musicians do. They know they will fall back on their feet eventually, so they simply use descending scales to facilitate this movement in the cycle of fourth, right? So 2-5-1 is an example of cycle of fourths. Sorry, I know I'm talking a little bit fast, right? This is really exciting. So one of those ways I can point you to the blog for, I guess it's about a year ago, I published Making the Changes on All the Things You Are. And one of the methods we use, that is in use, is to just descend the scale over the changes of all the things you are. You just keep going down and you will pass every chord perfectly. Well, perfectly. It's the best option, the simplest option that outline all the chord changes. So I recommend you to give this, take a look at this. And also, speaking of descending scales, and then going back to the topic of bebop scales, I want to address a thing that we use bebop scales to have 8 notes instead of 7 notes to align with the bar, so to speak. So if you have I'll take the G1 again, the G7, so this G mixolydian, it goes like this, no passing tone, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and which is not bad. But if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, you even it out by having 8 notes in a bar instead of 7 notes. And so that's one of the reasons why we do this kind of trick to have a passing tone 1 somewhere within the scale to make sure we align with the beat. So the result of this is to get the G, the F, the D and the B natural note. And then you hear this. So it's basically the arpeggio you're playing falling on the downbeats. Of course, this outlines G7 Mixolydian chord super well. It's very bland. It's 1, 3, 5, 7 of G7. Right? People could say, well, this is still all C major except for the passing tone. So when there's a C major chord, you might want to do this. It would work, but you would have to be aware that you have a G on the downbeat, which is fine. Then you have another downbeat, you have an F, a D, and a B. So this is pretty much, it's a diminished triad. So it's something that is so unresolved that it's not something I would recommend you use over C major. However, as you gain mastery over this, you might want to do this over a C major to yourself within your line, outline the 5 chord of the current chord that's sounding, which kind of brings me to my next topic would be, this is a secondary dominant. It's a dominant chord, a 5 from the 2-5 or 1-6-2-5. The dominant that is not in the sheet music, but that in your solo you decided to play and outline anyways. So this is another, so sorry, to conclude, to kind of do a quick wrap up of what we talked about descending scales, then we talked about bebop scales, and we talked about why bebop scales align with the chords and why descending scales are essential to outline the cycle of fourths, right? And then another thing I want to point out is these bebop scales, people will go, okay, you got your bebop scale for a dominant chord for a Mixolydian. It's in G7, so you can apply it on C major. I'm like, maybe there's a caveat there. And then you can apply it on D Dorian. That's why I'm like, well, if you really want to outline D Dorian, you could kind of choose a different passing tone. And the point is, we have 12 notes total existing, and we have 7 notes in our scales. So there's only 5 outside notes, and it just happens that each mode of the major scale has a really cool passing tone that makes it outline the chord perfectly, which is something that I talked about in 25 exercises for jazz guitar phrasing, for better jazz guitar phrasing, which is a course on the platform on jazzguitarlessons.net for diagonal fingerings, so not just this and not just that, so kind of a blend of both, diagonal repeated fingerings over bebop scales, and more. So I could encourage you to check this out if you're curious as to, well, what else could you do on a D Dorian if you have a D minor 7? Instead of doing, you could do, which is just the D Dorian mode with an added passing tone. So this is a fascinating topic, but I'll leave it for another time because I'm kind of running out of time. Sip of coffee, deep breath. Which brings me to my latest point for this vlog that I've been meaning to shoot a vlog about this or discuss it in some way, shape or form on the website, and I didn't. It's been a while, a few months, and it's the reason why passing tones are so important when you want to add chromaticism. Speaking of the devil, we are still working on a course called Improv and Chromaticism, which will be out in the next couple of weeks, I think. And the point in this course is to give you the baby steps on how to start adding your own chromatic notes in between your own lines. And it's not too deep in the theory. It's just here's a way, here's exactly the exercises you have to practice. And we have a bit of why, a bit of explanation why. And I want to add some why in this vlog now. And the why for passing tones simply is you have to look at the harmonic tendency of the note you are adding that is outside of the scale. So once again, the people's key, C major. Boy, do I love C major. Then you go, okay, we have our notes. Right, we have these 7 notes. And what would be a first note we could be adding? Just one. Then I go, well, let's start with C sharp. This is totally not the scaling. And what I'm asking you to consider is, what does C sharp note say about the situation that perhaps C is not giving us? And I'll give you a quick shortcut is the strongest type of resolution we have in music is the 7-to-1 resolution, is what we call in French la note sensible, which is a sensitive note, doesn't translate. So it's 7. So if you play do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, si, so, si, do, it's a resolution where you hear G7. Going to C. So if you keep this in mind and you look at the C sharp we're talking about previously, perhaps it's a sensible, it's a sensitive note wanting to go here, wanting to go to a D minor of some sort. Why? Because D minor is in the key of C major. So thinking about that, you go, and you might scratch here and go, And if you really think hard, you go, I wonder what, sorry. I saw this in a stand-up comic, I can't stop doing it. So if you look at the C sharp and you think it's going to go to D minor, then you think that the C sharp perhaps is the third of the dominant chord, just like the B note of the G7 chord is the third of the G7 and it wants to go up. Then you might say, well, this is A7, right? So A7, for people that are not used to this, there's a great guide on the website called the No Nonsense Guide to Jazz Harmony, and it talks about secondary dominants. I say this often, I guess a lot of people don't know what secondary dominants are. So a secondary dominant is a dominant in the moment that does not belong to the key. So if you're in the key of C major and you have a chord called A, you expect it to be A minor. You've all played this campfire style, A minor, and maybe a D, maybe an F, maybe an F minor, and then C, right? So if you have an A7, this is a total outsider because why? Because you have that C sharp, and perhaps that C sharp is what is leading you into your D minor, or even F. So the point here is, okay, you want to start adding tones, and don't just go machine gun blazing. By the way, people from Vegas attack, may they rest in peace, moment of silence. I hate this when I use the term machine gun. So if you take a passing tone approach and you want to flare and just add these passing tones anywhere while you play your 8 notes, it won't amount to much. But if you know where those are coming from and what the tendencies are, well, I encourage you to look at Improv and Chromaticism, the new course on store.jazzguitarlessons.net, coming soon. And when you know this, you know which way the harmony pulls. So you might go, okay, I know that I'm in C major, and if I want to add a C sharp, it will kind of come from that A7 area, and it's okay because I'm going to D, which is D Dorian, so I'm just going to figure out that my D Dorian is, the passing tone for D Dorian, the best one is this C sharp, so this D Dorian. Why? Because if you use this and you look at the other notes involved, you get the full A7, sorry my computer screen went blank, so you get the full A7 arpeggio for free from the C major scale by thinking about the secondary dominant of the D minor, which is D Dorian, right? You see where I'm going with this? If you started to do this with every chord in the key of C major, you would get 6 different, or say 5 different secondary dominants. So there's one leading to D minor, there's one leading to E minor, there's one leading to F, to G, to A. And those have their particular passing tones. And just so happens that the passing tones you add bring up that secondary dominant naturally. They do so. So sorry for the long video, guys. I know it was theory intense. Thank you for following the jazzguitarlessons.net vlog. We have a few updates that came recently. We have the Ultimate Guide to Dominant Chords that came out on the blog. We also have the hands-on series, which is going to be something else. I promise. We just published a pilot, so please seek this video. It's called Must Know Licks on 251, Connecting Chords with Extensions. So it's a really hands-on approach to jazz guitar that you will see, or you can't watch a video in an armchair. You really have to grab your axe and kind of play along and play the examples and make your own examples and study the lines. So short, punchy videos, shorter than this one, maybe 5-7 minutes, and at least you get to get some licks under your fingers by getting context and not just a bunch of notes. Good. Once again, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher, and I'll see you next time.